Growing up in our small town wasn't easy, especially in our modest two-story house where the dynamics were always complicated. I'm Molly, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who should love you most. My father worked long hours at the local mine. He was quiet, tired, and usually buried himself in the newspaper after dinner. My mother, on the other hand, was anything but quiet. She'd spend endless hours sprawled on our worn-out couch, phone pressed to her ear, cackling with her friends while some mindless talk show droned on in the background. "Linda, you won't believe what happened on The Real Housewives today," she'd squeal into the phone, completely ignoring the pile of unwashed dishes in the sink or the empty refrigerator that needed restocking. Then there was my younger brother, Riley. Mom's precious golden child. Even from my earliest memories, the difference in how she treated us was crystal clear. While I wore hand-me-downs and dollar store shoes, Riley got the latest gaming consoles and brand-name clothes. "Mom, my shoes are falling apart," I remember telling her one day when I was 12. "Could we maybe get new ones this weekend?" She barely looked up from her phone. "There's no money for shoes right now, Molly. Besides, those still look fine to me." But later that same week, I watched her return from the mall with a shopping bag full of new clothes for Riley. "Look what I got for my special boy," she cooed, while he eagerly dug through the bag. Dinner was always a testament to her negligence, microwaved frozen dinners or takeout containers scattered across our kitchen table. Sometimes, I'd stare at the sad, plastic-wrapped meals and dream about having a normal mom who actually cooked real food. By the time I reached high school, I knew college wasn't in my future. There were no savings, no college fund, not even discussions about higher education. The reality of our financial situation hit me hard when I overheard my parents arguing one night. "We can't keep living like this," my father's voice was strained. "The bills are piling up." "Well, what do you expect me to do about it?" Mom snapped back. "You're the one who should be making more money." That's when I made my decision. The day I turned 15, I walked into the cafe 3 blocks from our house and asked for a job. The manager, Mrs. Peterson, took one look at my determined face and gave me a chance as a part-time waitress. "You've got good instincts, kid," she told me after my first week. "Keep this up, and you'll go far." For the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself. But even that small victory was tainted by my mother's reaction. "A waitress?" she scoffed when I told her about my new job. "Well, I suppose someone has to do it. Just don't let it interfere with taking care of your brother's needs." After graduating high school, I landed a full-time waitressing position at Giovanni's, one of the nicer restaurants in town. My 3 years of experience at the cafe made me an attractive hire, and the manager didn't even hesitate when offering me the job. The salary was significantly better than what I'd been making at the cafe, but that wasn't even the best part. Mr. Romano had this amazing policy where servers could take home leftover food after their shifts. In a high-end Italian restaurant, these weren't just any leftovers, we're talking about gourmet pasta, premium steaks, and fresh-baked desserts that would otherwise go to waste. The first time I brought home a container of fettuccine alfredo and garlic bread, my family's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. I thought this might finally be something that would make them appreciate me. How wrong I was. It quickly became a pattern. I'd bring home these beautiful meals, carefully packed and still warm, only to find that by the time I got a chance to eat, there would be nothing but scraps left. Riley always got first pick, followed by Mom and Dad, and whatever remained, if anything, was supposed to be mine. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I came home with a magnificent portion of osso buco that the chef had specifically saved for me. By the time I finished changing out of my work clothes, I found Riley scraping the last bits from the container. "Hey," I protested. "I was going to eat that. Couldn't you have at least saved me some?" Mom's head snapped up from her phone. "Molly, how dare you be so selfish? You should be ashamed of yourself." "Selfish? I'm the one bringing this food home. You get to eat this fancy food all day at work," she snapped back. "Your brother only gets to enjoy it once a day." You should be grateful we're not asking you to bring more. I stood there, fighting back tears of frustration. I don't eat at work, Mom. I'm too busy serving other people. Well, that's your choice, she replied dismissively, already turning back to her phone. Nobody's stopping you from eating there. Riley just smirked and licked his fork clean, not even bothering to hide his satisfaction. The worst part wasn't even the hunger, it was the realization that in their eyes, I would always be worth less than my brother, no matter what I contributed to the family. 2 years flew by, and Riley finally graduated high school. I remember sitting at his graduation ceremony, watching him receive his diploma, and thinking that maybe, just maybe, things would change now. Maybe he'd finally start contributing to the household like I had been doing since I was 15. So, Riley, I asked him the day after graduation, while he was sprawled on the couch with his game controller, have you started looking for jobs yet? He barely glanced away from his video game. Nah, I'm taking a gap year. Need some time to figure out what I want to do with my life, you know? A gap year? I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. But we can barely make ends meet as it is. Oh, honey, Mom chimed in from her usual spot on the recliner, Riley's still too young to work. He needs time to find his path. I wanted to scream. Too young? He was the same age I was when I started working full-time. But instead, I took a deep breath and tried to reason with them. Mom, I started working when I was 15. Riley's 18 now. That was different, Mom waved her hand dismissively. You wanted to work. Riley needs to focus on his future. And so began Riley's gap year. Every day, I'd leave for my morning shift at the restaurant, and he'd still be asleep. When I'd return in the evening, he'd either be in his room playing video games or out with his friends, the house just as messy as I'd left it. The dishes would pile up in the sink, the trash would overflow, and heaven forbid anyone ask him to help with laundry. I couldn't take it anymore. Why doesn't he have to work? I confronted my parents one evening during dinner. Everyone else his age has a job. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair while Mom immediately went on the defensive. Stop attacking your brother. You don't understand how hard it is for him. The job market is terrible right now, and he's suffering enough without you making him feel worse. I tried a different approach. Look, we actually need delivery drivers at the restaurant. I could put in a good word for him. It's a decent starting salary, plus tips. Riley chose that moment to emerge from his cave, presumably for his evening beer run with friends. A delivery driver? He scoffed, grabbing his keys from the counter. I didn't get straight A's to become some delivery boy, Molly. I know my worth. And what exactly do you think you're worth right now? I muttered under my breath. He paused at the door, turning to face me with that smug expression I'd grown to despise. Unlike some people, I have standards. When I get a job, it'll be something worthy of my abilities. Something with a future. Not everyone wants to be a waitress their whole life. The way he said waitress, like it was something dirty, made my blood boil. But before I could respond, he was gone, the screen door slamming behind him. It was Riley's 19th birthday when I finally understood just how deep my family's favoritism ran. That morning, I was getting ready for work when I heard excited voices from outside. Curious, I looked out my window to see my parents presenting Riley with a car. Yes, a car. It wasn't new, a used Honda Civic with some scratches and dents, but it was still a functioning vehicle. I stood there, frozen, watching Riley jump around like a kid at Christmas while Mom took pictures with her phone. I thought about the bus I'd be catching in 30 minutes, the same bus I'd been taking to work for years, rain or shine. The same bus where I'd often stand for the entire 40-minute ride after a grueling 8-hour shift on my feet. Do you like it, sweetie? Mom's voice drifted up to my window. We know it's not brand new, but it's perfect for getting around town. This is awesome, Riley exclaimed, already sitting in the driver's seat. I can't wait to show the guys. I didn't say anything before leaving for work. What could I say? That I'd been working for years and couldn't afford a car while my unemployed brother just got one handed to him? That I was tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family? But the real surprise came that evening during my shift at Giovanni's. I was serving a table near the window when I saw them walk in, my entire family, dressed in their best clothes, with Riley leading the way like he owned the place. "Molly," Mom waved me over dramatically. "We're here to celebrate Riley's birthday properly." My brother grinned at me. "We want the best table in the banquet hall. My friends Mike and Dave will be here in half an hour. And we want you to be our server," Mom added. "Only you. We don't trust anyone else to make this special evening perfect." I wanted to tell them I already had tables assigned in my section, that the banquet hall was typically reserved in advance, that I couldn't just abandon my other customers. But Mr. Romano overheard and, trying to be helpful, rearranged things to accommodate them. What followed was 3 hours of pure humiliation. I served them course after course while they made endless jokes at my expense. "Hey, sis, the water's a bit warm. Don't they teach you proper serving temperature in waitress school?" Riley snickered. "Molly, dear, you missed a spot when you wiped the table." "Maybe that's why you're still just a server," Mom chimed in, while his friends laughed. By the time they finished their elaborate meal, complete with expensive wines and multiple courses, I was exhausted and emotionally drained. But the worst was yet to come. As they gathered their coats, Mom pulled me aside with that fake sweet smile I'd grown to dread. "Darling, there's just one tiny thing," she said, lowering her voice. "We're a bit short on cash right now. You'll need to cover the bill. Consider it your gift to your brother for his birthday." I stared at the bill in my hand, $247.83. Nearly half my weekly salary. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "You came here knowing you couldn't pay?" "Don't be dramatic, Molly," she hissed. "It's your brother's birthday. Surely you want to do something nice for him? Besides, you get an employee discount, don't you?" They all stood there, watching me, Riley twirling his new car keys, while Mom gave me that expectant look that said I had no choice. And she was right, I couldn't let them walk out without paying. It would cost me my job. 6 months after Riley's extravagant birthday celebration, my own birthday rolled around. That morning, Mom was unusually chipper. "Don't make any plans for tonight, sweetie," she sang out as I headed to work. "We have a special surprise waiting for you when you get home." For the first time in years, I actually felt hopeful. Maybe they'd finally realized how unfairly they'd been treating me. Maybe they'd finally show me the same kind of appreciation they showed Riley. I spent my entire shift daydreaming about what might be waiting for me, maybe a nice family dinner, perhaps even something special they'd saved up for. I practically rushed home after my shift ended, my heart beating faster as I opened the front door. But what I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. There stood my family, dressed to the nines, Mom in a brand new designer dress that must have cost at least $400, matching shoes that I recognized from the expensive boutique downtown, and Dad and Riley in crisp new suits that definitely weren't from the discount store. "Happy birthday," they chorused, but all I could see was the money they were wearing, my money. "Here's your gift, sis," Riley smirked, tossing a small package at me. With trembling hands, I opened it to find a perfume box. But something was off. The designer name was misspelled, Gucci, instead of Gucci. The label was crooked, clearly stuck on by hand, and when I sprayed a tiny bit, the chemical smell was so overwhelming it made my eyes water. That was the moment something inside me snapped. "Are you kidding me?" My voice started low, but quickly rose to a shout. "Molly," Mom looked shocked. "Don't be ungrateful." "Ungrateful?" I was screaming now, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "I pay all the bills in this house. I buy the groceries. I give you expensive gifts for every holiday." "Keep your voice down," Dad muttered, but I was beyond stopping. "You bought Riley a car with my money. I'm still paying for his gas, and he won't even give me a ride to work. I've asked him 3 times, and each time he said he was too busy playing video games. Riley shifted uncomfortably. It's not my fault you can't afford your own car. Because I spend all my money on this family. I grabbed at my hair in frustration. And what do I get for my birthday? Fake perfume that smells like paint thinner while you're all standing there in clothes that cost more than I make in 2 weeks. You're being hysterical, Mom snapped. This is no way to act on your birthday. Hysterical? You want to see hysterical? I snatched up the perfume bottle. This isn't even real. You couldn't even be bothered to get me something that wasn't a cheap knockoff. That's enough, Dad's voice boomed. If you're going to act like this, you can just go to your room and stay there. Yes, Mom added, smoothing her expensive dress. Go celebrate alone until you can behave properly and show some gratitude. I turned and walked to my room without another word, but this time was different. This time I wasn't going to cry. This time I was going to plan. Because in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I needed to get out of this house. Just a week after my disastrous birthday, Mr. Romano called me into his office. I was nervous at first, wondering if my family's behavior during Riley's birthday dinner had finally caught up with me. Molly, he said, gesturing for me to sit down, I've been watching your work here for a long time. You're reliable, professional, and our customers love you. How would you feel about becoming our new receptionist? The position comes with a significant pay raise, of course. What do you say? I nearly cried right there in his office. Yes, absolutely yes. That very afternoon, during my break, I started searching for apartments. With my new salary, I could finally afford to live on my own. It felt like the universe was finally giving me a chance to escape. By some miracle, I found a small one-bedroom apartment just 3 blocks from the restaurant. It wasn't fancy, just a basic kitchen, living room, and bedroom, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, it was away from my family. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, took one look at my proof of employment from Giovanni's and approved me on the spot. You seem like a responsible young lady, she said as I signed the lease. When would you like to move in? Tomorrow, if possible, I replied, my hands shaking with excitement as I wrote the check for the deposit. That evening at dinner, while Mom was serving her usual microwaved meals, I decided to drop my bomb. I'm moving out tomorrow, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've found an apartment near work. Mom's face turned an alarming shade of red. How dare you? How are we supposed to pay our bills? Have you even thought about that? You're being completely selfish. I took a deep breath. Dad has a job. And Riley's perfectly capable of working. Maybe it's time he started contributing. I have devoted my entire life to you children. Mom was in full meltdown mode now, tears streaming down her face. And this is how you repay me? By abandoning your family when we need you most? Riley just sat there, shoving food in his mouth and watching the show like it was another one of his video games. Dad stared at his plate, silent as always. I've heard enough, I said, standing up from the table. I'm leaving tomorrow, and that's final. You ungrateful little, Mom's voice followed me up the stairs, but I tuned it out. I spent the next hour packing my belongings into the few boxes and bags I'd secretly bought over the past week. It wasn't much, some clothes, a few books, my laptop, and the small amount of jewelry I owned. My whole life fit into 4 boxes and 2 duffel bags. When the taxi arrived, I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out the front door, to the sound of Mom's continued screaming about family loyalty and ungrateful children. As the taxi pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of our house in the rearview mirror, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The first month in my new apartment was pure bliss. No drama, no guilt trips, no watching Riley being waited on hand and foot. Just peace and quiet. I could cook what I wanted, watch what I wanted, and most importantly, spend my money how I wanted. Then came the phone call. Molly, Mom's voice was sharp even through the phone. The utility bills are due. I took a deep breath. Mom, I don't live there anymore. I'm not responsible for those bills. We were counting on that money, she screeched. You have an obligation to help your family. No, Mom, I don't. Riley's had a whole month to find a job. He can help now. Your brother can't find work right now. And he needs money, he crashed the car last week and needs repairs. He can't work without a car. I almost laughed at the irony. So he crashed the car you bought with my money, and now you want more of my money to fix it? Not happening. This isn't my problem anymore. The next 6 months were transformative. Without having to support my entire family, I was finally able to save money. I bought myself a used Toyota, nothing fancy, but it was mine, paid for with my own money. No strings attached, no guilt, no obligations. I felt like I could finally breathe. Then one evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find my parents standing there. My stomach dropped, I had never told them my address. We need to talk, Mom said, pushing past me into my apartment. Dad followed, looking uncomfortable as usual. We need money, Molly. Your father's about to be laid off, and Riley still hasn't found work. You have to help us. No, I said firmly. I don't have to do anything. We're your family. Mom's voice was rising. You can't just abandon us. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just not enabling you anymore. Dad finally spoke up. The mine's cutting back workers. I might not have a job by next month. Then Riley needs to step up, I replied. He's had plenty of time to find work. Fine, Mom's face twisted into something ugly. If that's how you want to play it, then you'll have problems too. My mother's throat wasn't empty. The very next morning, I woke up to Mrs. Chen frantically banging on my door. Molly, your car. Someone set it on fire. I ran outside in my pajamas to find my Toyota, my pride and joy that I'd worked so hard for, reduced to a smoking shell in the parking lot. My legs nearly gave out, but then Mrs. Chen grabbed my arm. I have cameras, she said quickly. The police are on their way. We caught everything on video. The footage was crystal clear. There was Riley, at 3 a.m., pouring something over my car and lighting a match. He hadn't noticed the security cameras tucked away in the building's eaves, hadn't even thought to look for them. He just did his work quickly and walked away as my car went up in flames, probably thinking he'd never be caught. The police arrested him within hours. My phone started ringing almost immediately. You have to drop the charges. Mom was hysterical. He's your brother. You can't let them take him to jail. Actually, I can, I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. But I'll make you a deal, reimburse me for the car, and I'll withdraw my statement. We don't have that kind of money. You know that. Then Riley can face the consequences of his actions. For once in his life. You heartless little, I hung up before she could finish. The trial was quick. The evidence was undeniable, and Riley had priors I hadn't even known about. Apparently, he'd been in trouble for vandalism before, but my parents had always managed to sweep it under the rug. This time, there was no sweeping. He got 3 years and was ordered to pay restitution equal to the value of my car. My parents eventually took out a loan to pay me back, probably hoping I'd drop the charges if they did. But it was too late, Riley had already been sentenced. He served a year and a half before getting out on good behavior, though I only heard this through distant relatives who occasionally update me on family gossip. They tell me my parents still live in the same house, struggling more than ever. Dad's health is failing, but he keeps working at the mine because he has to. Mom spends her days lamenting about her poor boy whose life was ruined by his sister. Riley, unsurprisingly, still doesn't have a job. Turns out having an arson conviction makes it even harder to find that prestigious position he always thought he deserved. Sometimes, friends ask me if I feel guilty. If maybe I was too harsh. They ask if I ever think about reaching out, trying to mend fences. Would you give a second chance to someone who tried to destroy everything you worked for? I ask them back. Would you trust people who watched you struggle for years while they spoiled someone else? The truth is, I don't regret any of it. My family made their choices, years and years of choices, and now they're living with the consequences. They chose to enable Riley's laziness and entitlement. They chose to treat me like their personal ATM. They chose to threaten me when I stopped playing along. And finally, Riley chose to commit a crime, thinking he'd get away with it like he got away with everything else. I'm done feeling guilty about their choices. These days, my life is peaceful. I still live in the same apartment. Mrs. Chen actually reduced my rent after the incident, saying she'd never had such a good tenant. I'm still working at Giovanni's, but now I'm the head receptionist. I've been saving money again. Not for another car, though I did eventually get one, with better insurance this time, but for something bigger. Next fall, I'm starting college, part-time at first, but it's a start. I'm going to study business management. Maybe someday I'll open my own restaurant.